Scene 1. It all started the night I stayed over at my friend's house for the very first time. I had been there during the day a couple of times before, but I had never actually spent the night. He lived a bit outside of town, in one of those neighborhoods where the houses were spread far apart, each with a little too much land around them, and the streetlights never seemed to reach as far as they should. Even during the day, there was always something strangely quiet about that area. Not peaceful, quiet, like the kind that makes you notice every sound, every shift in the air, as if the world is holding its breath. When I arrived, it was just past sunset. The sky had turned that deep navy blue where the last orange streaks were fading away. I remember the crunch of gravel under my shoes as I walked up to the front door. His house wasn't old, but it wasn't new either. Built sometime in the 70s, maybe. A 2-story place with brick on the bottom half and faded wood siding on the top. A wide porch ran across the front, with a single porch light glowing above the door. That light was weak, almost yellow, and for some reason, it made the shadows around the porch look even darker. He greeted me like normal, casual, joking around like nothing was strange. Inside, the house was warmer, but not in a cozy way. It had that faint smell of dust and old carpet, like a place that had been lived in for years without ever really being updated. I noticed right away that the hallway light flickered when the front door closed, just once, then steadied again. He didn't seem to notice, but I did. We spent the first couple of hours downstairs just hanging out. His parents weren't home. They were apparently away for the weekend, so it was just us. At first, everything was normal. We played some video games, talked about school, laughed about dumb things. If you had walked in during that time, you wouldn't have thought anything was strange at all. But the thing about nights like that is how quickly the atmosphere can change once the house starts to settle. Once the laughter dies down. And once you realize that you're surrounded by silence so deep that even your own breathing seems too loud. Around midnight, we decided to head upstairs to his room. I remember carrying my backpack up the staircase, and for the first time I got a good look at the second floor. The hallway stretched longer than I expected, with doors on either side and a small window at the very end. That window let in just enough moonlight to outline the walls, and I swear the hallway felt colder than downstairs. His room was the second on the left. I stepped inside and set my things down, trying not to focus on the way the house creaked behind me. The room itself was fairly normal. Posters on the wall, an old desk, a bed pushed up against the far corner. But I noticed two things right away. First, the closet door didn't quite shut all the way. It always seemed to be left open by just a crack. Second, the air in that room was heavier somehow, like the ventilation didn't quite reach it properly. He didn't seem to notice, or maybe he was used to it. We talked for a while longer, but as the night dragged on, the mood shifted. He eventually drifted off to sleep, his breathing steady in the dark, while I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I couldn't get comfortable. I kept hearing things, little sounds that didn't make sense. A faint tapping, like someone drumming their fingers against the wall. The creak of the floorboards in the hallway, even though no one was walking there. At first, I told myself it was the house settling. Every old house does that, but it didn't feel like that. The sounds were too deliberate, too spaced apart, like they belonged to someone moving slowly, carefully. The longer I stayed awake, the more I started noticing patterns. The tapping would come from the wall near the closet, then stop, then start again from the corner of the room. I shifted in bed, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. I held my breath waiting, and that's when I heard it. The faintest sound of the closet door shifting, as if it were being nudged from the inside. It was so subtle that if I had been half asleep, I might have dismissed it. But I was wide awake. My eyes shot toward that crack in the door, the tiny sliver of blackness cutting through the otherwise dark room. I didn't see anything, just shadows, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was standing just beyond that gap, perfectly still, waiting. My heart started to race, and every instinct told me not to stare, not to focus on it. So I pulled the blanket up to my chin, shut my eyes tight, and tried to force myself to sleep. But sleep didn't come easily. Every time I thought I was drifting off, another sound would jolt me awake. A soft scrape, like fingernails dragging lightly across wood, a distant thump from somewhere downstairs. And once, just once, I could swear I heard breathing. Not mine, not my friend's. Something slow, ragged, almost as if it were being inhaled right against the closet door. I opened my eyes again, heart pounding. The closet door looked exactly the same, just slightly ajar. But now, with the moonlight at a different angle, I thought I could see something. A darker shape in the shadows, standing taller than the boxes and clothes that should have been inside. I blinked hard, telling myself it was my imagination, but the shape didn't disappear. It didn't move either. It just stood there, I considered waking my friend, but part of me was too afraid. What if he didn't see it? What if he laughed at me, told me it was nothing, and then went back to sleep? Then I'd be left alone with it, knowing it was still there. So I stayed quiet. I lay as still as I could, trying to pretend I hadn't noticed, hoping that whatever it was would lose interest. The hours crawled by. At some point I must have drifted in and out of shallow sleep, because I remember dreams mixing with reality. I'd hear whispers in my dreams and then realize they were still there when I woke up. Faint voices, impossible to understand, almost as if they were coming from inside the walls. The worst part was the feeling. That crawling sensation on the back of my neck. The weight of eyes on me, as if something was studying me from the dark. Every time I tried to move, the mattress would creak, and I'd freeze, terrified of making noise. Then, sometime near dawn, just before the sky began to lighten, I heard the loudest sound yet. A distinct, deliberate knock. 3 of them. From inside the closet. My entire body went cold. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. My friend stirred slightly, mumbling in his sleep, but he didn't wake up. I wanted to scream, to run out of the room, but I was paralyzed by fear. The knocking stopped, and the silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. I stared at the closet until the first rays of morning light seeped through the window. With the sun finally rising, the shape seemed to vanish. The shadows looked normal again. The noises stopped, and the house went back to being just a house. My friend woke up eventually, yawning, stretching, completely unaware of what had happened. He asked if I'd slept well, and all I could do was nod, too shaken to explain. But deep down, I knew what I'd experienced wasn't just my imagination, and that was only the first night. Scene 2. The next morning was a strange blur. Sunlight poured through the curtains, filling the room with warmth and color, and for a moment I almost convinced myself the night before had been nothing more than an overactive imagination. Morning has a way of erasing the fear of the night, like light can wash away whatever shadows were hiding there. But even as I sat up, rubbing my eyes and stretching stiff muscles, there was a heaviness in my chest I couldn't shake. My friend was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor, scrolling through his phone like nothing unusual had happened. He looked at me and asked if I wanted breakfast. I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop glancing at the closet. It stood there, just as it had the night before. Door cracked slightly, shadows filling the gap. It looked harmless in the daylight. Just a normal closet in a normal room, yet my skin prickled every time I looked at it. We went downstairs. The house smelled faintly of stale cereal and dust. The kitchen blinds were half open, letting the sunlight in streaks across the table. He poured us both bowls of cereal and started talking about the plans for the day, like riding bikes down the old trail behind the neighborhood or maybe walking into town to get snacks. I nodded, pretending to listen, but I was distracted. As I lifted the spoon to my mouth, I heard it, a sound, soft, distant, like something shifting upstairs. I froze mid-bite, cereal soaking in milk, and looked up at the ceiling. He didn't seem to notice. The sound stopped as quickly as it came, leaving me to wonder if I'd really heard it. Later, we went outside. The air was crisp, the sun bright, and for a few hours, I managed to forget about the unease that clung to me inside that house. We rode our bikes, wandered along the trails, laughed about stupid things, and everything felt normal. By the time we returned, sweat on our foreheads and dirt on our shoes, the house almost felt welcoming again. Almost. But when we stepped inside, the shift in atmosphere hit me instantly. The air was cooler, the silence heavier. It was like crossing an invisible threshold where the weight of the night lingered even in the afternoon. I tried to ignore it. We showered, changed, and spent some time in the living room watching TV. The hours slipped by, and eventually, the sun began its slow descent again. That dread started to build in my chest as shadows grew long across the walls. The thought of spending another night in that room, with that closet, with those sounds, it made my stomach twist. I didn't say anything, though. I didn't want to seem paranoid. By the time we went back upstairs, the house had fallen into that unsettling quiet again. His parents were still gone, and the whole place felt abandoned except for us. As I walked past the long upstairs hallway, I noticed something different. The window at the very end, the one that let in moonlight the night before, was covered now. A curtain that hadn't been there yesterday hung over it, blocking any view outside. I stopped for a moment, confused, but he didn't comment. Maybe I'd missed it before. Maybe it had always been there, but I didn't think so. Back in his room, he flopped onto the bed, scrolling on his phone again, while I sat at the desk. My backpack sat beside me, still packed with most of my things, ready to go. It was almost like I didn't trust the idea of unpacking here, as if a part of me already knew I wouldn't feel at home in this house. The night stretched on. Hours passed with the soft glow of his phone being the only light in the room. Eventually, he fell asleep again, and I was left alone with my thoughts. I told myself I wouldn't focus on the closet. I promised myself I wouldn't give it power by staring at it like I had last night. But of course, my eyes kept drifting back to it. The gap in the door looked wider now. Not much, but enough to notice. Enough to make me wonder if it had actually moved. I laid down, pulling the blanket up, trying to force sleep. For a while I thought maybe it would be easier tonight. The house was silent and my body was exhausted. My eyelids grew heavy and the world began to blur. Then I heard it again. A faint, deliberate sound. Not tapping this time. Not the creak of wood, but something softer. Like the sound of fabric being dragged slowly across the floor. My eyes shot open. The sound came from the closet. I didn't move at first. I just listened, every muscle tense. The sound came again, longer this time. Something shifting against the carpet, dragging across it inch by inch. My throat went dry. I glanced at my friend, but he was fast asleep, his chest rising and falling peacefully. The sound stopped. Silence filled the room so thick it hurt my ears. I kept staring at the closet, waiting, praying I wouldn't see anything. And then in the faint silver light of the moon filtering through the window, I saw it. The door moved, just slightly, just enough to creak on its hinges. My body locked in place. It didn't swing open, but it shifted, widening the crack further. My breath caught in my throat. For what felt like forever, nothing else happened. Then came the whisper. At first I thought it was in my head. A soft, hissing voice that seemed to curl through the room. Too low to understand, but unmistakably real. It wasn't my friend. It wasn't me. It came from the closet. Every hair on my body stood on end. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might wake him. I squeezed my eyes shut, but that only made it worse. The whispering grew louder, like more than one voice now, overlapping, weaving into each other. Words I couldn't make out, words I didn't want to make out. I pulled the blanket over my head, curling up, trying to block it out, but the whispering seeped through, slipping into my ears no matter how tightly I pressed my hands against them. And then I felt it. The weight on the bed, subtle at first, like the mattress dipping ever so slightly near my feet. My stomach dropped. My friend hadn't moved. His breathing was steady, unbroken. Whatever was pressing into the mattress wasn't him. It shifted closer. Inch by inch, the pressure moved up the bed. I held my breath, trembling under the covers, tears stinging my eyes. My mind screamed at me to run, to do something, but my body refused to move. The weight reached my legs, my chest. It pressed down, cold and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My vision blurred behind closed eyes, panic threatening to drown me. And then, as suddenly as it began, it lifted. The mattress sprang back, the whispering cut off, and the room fell into silence again. My whole body shook, sweat soaking the sheets. I didn't move until the first light of dawn slipped through the curtains. When I finally sat up, gasping for air, the closet door was closed. Completely. I know I hadn't touched it. Scene 3. The third morning began with the strangest silence I had ever experienced in that house. The sun rose the same way it always did, pouring pale light across the floorboards. But instead of washing away the night like it had before, it seemed to make the shadows cling tighter to the corners of the room. My body ached with exhaustion. I hadn't slept properly since I'd arrived, and every inch of me felt heavy, like I was dragging someone else's weight along with my own. My friend woke up cheerful again, yawning, stretching, asking if I wanted pancakes. I could barely answer. I sat there at the edge of the bed, staring at the closet. It was shut again, perfectly shut, but the memory of last night's whispers clung to me like cobwebs I couldn't brush away. Downstairs, the air felt colder than usual, though the thermostat on the wall read the same. I sat at the kitchen table while he cooked, and I noticed how quiet the house was without the TV, without music, without anything. The hum of the refrigerator sounded too loud, the ticking of the wall clock sharp enough to dig into my skull. Every now and then, there would be another sound layered beneath it, a faint shuffle, like footsteps overhead. But when I glanced upward, I saw nothing. We ate in silence. I forced the pancakes down, though every bite tasted like paste in my mouth. He was talking about movies we should watch that night, maybe pulling out some old horror DVDs he'd found in his basement, laughing about how cheap and dumb they were. I almost told him I couldn't, that I needed to go home, that I was too tired, but the words wouldn't leave my mouth. Something in me felt trapped, like leaving wasn't an option anymore. The day passed slowly. We stayed indoors this time, mostly in the living room, where sunlight stretched through wide windows. It should have felt safe, but there was something off about the way the light hit the furniture. Like it couldn't quite reach certain corners of the room. At one point, I swore I saw movement in the reflection of the television screen, just behind us, shadows shifting when neither of us moved. I told myself it was exhaustion, that's all. By the time evening arrived, my chest felt tight with dread. I didn't want the sun to set. I didn't want to climb those stairs again, but I had no choice. He headed up first, flipping the hallway light on, calling back for me to hurry. I lingered for a second at the bottom, staring up at the long stretch of the staircase, the dim glow at the top that looked too far away, like a trap waiting to be sprung. My legs felt heavy as I climbed. The upstairs hallway looked darker that night, even with the bulb overhead. The curtain at the end window stirred slightly, though there was no draft. I kept my eyes down, walking quickly to his room. Once inside, he closed the door and collapsed onto his bed, pulling out his phone again. I sat at the desk, backpack at my feet, too nervous to even pretend I was relaxed. The air felt thick, heavy, charged with something I couldn't explain. The night dragged on slowly. We watched videos on his phone, laughed half-heartedly, but every noise in the house seemed amplified. The creak of wood, the sigh of pipes, the faint hum of the wind outside. I tried not to glance at the closet, but eventually I couldn't help myself. It was open. Not wide, but enough. The same way it had been the first night. My stomach flipped. I swore I had seen him close it earlier. I remembered the click of the door, yet now it sat there, cracked, blackness inside swallowing the pale glow of the moon through the window. I didn't say anything. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. He was too busy scrolling, laughing at dumb memes, showing me the screen like nothing was wrong. But my eyes kept drifting back to that door, again and again, like a compulsion I couldn't fight. Hours passed. At some point he fell asleep, phone slipping from his hand onto the blanket. His breathing grew steady and I was left in silence again, alone, except for the closet. I lay down, heart racing, telling myself I'd stay awake this time, that I wouldn't let myself drift into that half-sleep where the whispers could crawl in. But exhaustion is cruel. My eyelids grew heavy, my body sank deeper into the mattress. That's when I heard it. The scrape. The same dragging sound as the night before, only louder this time, closer. I shot upright, breath caught in my throat. My friend didn't stir. His face remained calm in sleep. The scraping grew clearer, steady, deliberate, something moving across the closet floor. I stared at the crack in the door, every muscle screaming at me to look away, but I couldn't. My eyes were glued to it. And then, from the darkness, a hand appeared, pale, thin, fingers too long, curling around the edge of the doorframe. My blood ran cold. The hand just rested there, unmoving, as if whoever it belonged to was waiting. I couldn't breathe, couldn't scream. I just stared, heart slamming against my ribs. Slowly the door creaked wider. Inch by inch, the darkness inside seemed thicker than it should have been, like the light from the moon couldn't touch it. I saw something shift within the shadows. A shape, tall and narrow, stepping forward just enough for its outline to show. I wanted to run. I wanted to leap from the bed and tear out of the room, but my body wouldn't move. Then came the whisper. Clearer now, sharper, almost human. Words formed this time, though broken and distorted. You see, my skin crawled. The voice wasn't one, but many, layered on top of each other, echoing slightly, like a crowd speaking in unison. I clutched the blanket, pressing it to my chest, tears burning my eyes. The figure stepped closer. Not out of the closet, not fully, but enough. Its head tilted unnaturally to the side, movements jerky, wrong, like a puppet yanked by invisible strings. The shadows clung to it, hiding its features, but I could see the outline of its face. Too long, too narrow. It whispered again, "Stay." The air turned icy. My breath puffed out in faint mist. I wanted to scream, to shake my friend awake, to do anything. But the figure raised its hand slowly, one long finger pressed to where its lips should be. A silent warning. Don't speak. Don't move. The pressure in the room grew unbearable. My chest tightened, vision blurring at the edges. I thought I would pass out. And then, just like that, it stepped back. The closet door swung shut with a soft click. Silence. The air warmed slightly. My breath steadied. The room looked normal again, but I knew it wasn't gone. I knew it was still there, just behind that door, waiting. When morning finally came, I was trembling so badly I could barely stand. My friend stretched, yawning, asking if I wanted breakfast. He didn't notice the way my hands shook, The dark circles under my eyes, the way I stared at the closet like it was alive. I couldn't tell him. He wouldn't believe me, and yet, I knew. The house didn't want me to leave. Scene 4. By the time the fourth night approached, my nerves were worn down to the thinnest thread. Every part of me screamed to leave, to make up an excuse, to call someone to pick me up and get me as far away from that house as possible. But something about the way the days slipped into nights there, the way time seemed to blur whenever I was inside, made it impossible. I couldn't bring myself to say the words. I couldn't even form the thought out loud. It felt like the house itself wouldn't allow it. That day was a haze. My friend didn't notice the way I barely spoke, how I jumped at every little creak of the walls. He was cheerful as ever, talking about maybe staying up late to marathon some shows, asking if I wanted to dig through the basement to look at old board games. I followed him, nodded when I was supposed to, pretended I was fine. Inside, though, I was unraveling. The basement was worse than I expected. The air was damp, heavy with the smell of mildew, and the single bulb hanging from the ceiling cast a yellow light that made the shadows look alive. Boxes lined the walls, stacked high, filled with old clothes, books, things his family hadn't touched in years. I hated it down there immediately. Every step I took felt like I was being watched, like something was crouched just beyond the glow of the bulb, waiting. He rummaged through boxes, pulling out pieces of old board games, laughing about missing parts and bent cards. I barely heard him. My attention was fixed on the far corner of the room where the light didn't reach. It was darker there than it should have been, the shadows so thick it looked like a hole in the world. I stared too long and I thought I saw something shift, a ripple, almost like someone breathing. I turned away quickly, pretending to cough. When we went back upstairs, the air felt lighter, but the unease never left me. It clung to me like a second skin. By the time night came, I was shaking. I didn't want to go upstairs. I didn't want to go near that closet again, but I had no choice. He bounded up the stairs carefree, while I followed slowly, every step like walking toward a grave. The hallway seemed longer that night. The curtain at the end of the hall moved again, though no window was open. No breeze stirred the air. I paused, staring at it, and for the briefest second, I thought I saw a hand press against the fabric from behind. Thin, pale fingers, stretching the cloth outward before disappearing again. My stomach dropped. I forced myself forward, refusing to look back. His room felt colder than it ever had. The air was heavy, thick, like stepping into a sealed tomb. My eyes went immediately to the closet. Closed, perfectly closed. I didn't believe it. I knew it wouldn't last. We tried watching TV on his laptop, some old show he liked, but I couldn't focus. My ears strained for every sound. My eyes flicked to the closet again and again. Hours passed, the glow of the laptop fading as the battery died. Eventually, he fell asleep, his breathing steady, while I sat in the dark, too afraid to move. I told myself I'd keep watch. I'd stay awake. I wouldn't let it catch me off guard again. But exhaustion is cruel. My head dipped forward, my body heavy, and before I realized it, I slipped into that fragile space between waking and dreaming. That's when the whispers returned, clearer than ever. Dozens of voices overlapping, hissing, murmuring from the closet. My eyes snapped open, and I saw the door. It was open, wide this time. Wide enough for me to see inside. The shadows inside weren't just darkness. They moved, curled, stretched across the walls. Figures shifted in them, tall, hunched, their outlines flickering like smoke. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would tear through my chest. And then something stepped out. It was tall, impossibly tall, its head nearly grazing the ceiling. Its body was thin, twisted, limbs bending in ways that made no sense. Its face, or what should have been its face, was a blur of shifting darkness, features never settling. Its eyes glowed faintly, not bright, but enough to pierce the room like embers. I couldn't move. My body refused. My mind screamed, but my limbs were stone. It stepped closer, slow, deliberate. The floorboards didn't creak beneath it. It didn't make a sound. The air grew colder with every inch it moved, frost prickling against my skin. I tried to scream. Nothing came out. The figure leaned down, its face inches from mine. The shadows writhed where its mouth should have been, and a voice poured out. Not a whisper this time. A low, guttural sound vibrating in my bones. You don't belong. The words weren't just heard. They were felt, crawling through my skull, sinking into me. My vision blurred. My chest tightened. I thought I was going to die. And then suddenly, it straightened. Its head jerked toward the bed where my friend slept. It stood there for a moment watching him. Silent, still. I wanted to shout, to wake him, to protect him, but I couldn't move. The figure slowly raised one hand, long fingers curling unnaturally, pointing directly at him. The shadows around it thickened, swirling, reaching toward the bed. My stomach dropped. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The closet door slammed shut with a force that rattled the walls. The sound echoed through the house, loud enough that my friend stirred, groaning, rolling over in his sleep. But he didn't wake. I sat there trembling, gasping for breath, the silence pressing down on me like a weight. When morning came, I was still sitting up, wide-eyed, staring at the closet. My friend stretched, yawned, asked if I'd stayed up all night. I nodded, unable to speak. The sun was shining, but it didn't matter anymore. The light didn't chase away the darkness. Not in that house. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just me. Whatever was in that closet, it wanted him too. Scene 5. By the time the 5th night approached, I wasn't myself anymore. My reflection in the bathroom mirror that afternoon barely looked like me. Eyes sunken, skin pale, movements stiff like I was carrying the weight of weeks without rest. My hands trembled when I reached for the faucet, and I noticed faint scratches along my forearm I couldn't explain. They weren't deep, but they were there. Angry red marks like fingernails dragged across my skin while I slept. Except I hadn't slept. Not really. My friend was still oblivious. He asked if I was feeling sick, maybe coming down with something. I just nodded, said I was tired, which wasn't a lie. But how could I explain the truth? That something in his house, something in his closet, was wearing me down piece by piece, night after night. That every hour I spent here felt like I was sinking deeper into a place I couldn't climb out of. The day dragged on in slow motion. Every sound in the house grated against me. The groan of pipes, the hum of the fridge, the faint tapping of tree branches against windows. Even sunlight didn't help anymore. I sat at the kitchen table while he tried to make jokes, tried to lighten the mood, but all I could hear was the echo of that voice from the night before. You don't belong. When dusk finally came, I felt a panic building in me. I didn't want the night to arrive. I wanted to run, to leave the house and keep walking until my legs gave out. But I didn't move. Something held me there. An invisible weight pressing me down, whispering that leaving wasn't an option anymore. The climb up the stairs felt endless. Each step groaned under my weight, and the hallway stretched longer than it should have. Like the house itself was shifting, warping. The curtain at the end of the hall fluttered again, and I forced myself not to look, not to see if anything pressed against it this time. My chest was tight with fear by the time I stepped into his room. The closet door was already ajar. Not wide, just enough. Always just enough. I sat on the edge of the bed staring at it, while he talked about playing a game or maybe watching another movie. His voice felt far away, muffled like I was underwater. My eyes never left that door. Hours passed. He fell asleep, as he always did, easily, peacefully, like nothing was wrong. I envied him. The moment his breathing grew steady, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, thicker, pressing against my chest. The closet door creaked, slow, deliberate, wider. The darkness inside moved, not shadows, movement. My body tensed. I couldn't look away. The shapes inside were clearer now. Not just outlines, but figures. Dozens of them. Tall, bent, twisted, all swaying slightly like they were breathing together. My skin crawled as their eyes opened, dim, glowing embers staring straight at me. Whispers filled the room. Not faint this time, but loud, surrounding me, pressing into my ears, slipping under my skin. Words I couldn't understand, overlapping, drowning me. I clutched the blanket, shaking, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. Then, from the cluster of shadows, one stepped forward. It was the same figure from before, tall, thin, head tilted unnaturally, limbs too long. But now it wasn't alone. Behind it, others shifted closer, their movements jerky, unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. The figure leaned out of the closet, its body stretching impossibly, and spoke. Stay. The word rattled the room, shaking the air. My friend stirred in his sleep but didn't wake. The figure's head snapped toward him, and my stomach turned. Its hand rose again, long fingers curling, pointing. The shadows thickened, spilling from the closet like smoke, creeping across the floor toward the bed. I panicked. My body finally responded, and I reached out, shaking my friend hard, whispering his name, begging him to wake up. He groaned, half awake, confused. That's when the figure hissed. Not a word, just a sound. high-pitched, sharp like glass shattering inside my skull. I cried out, clutching my head, tears streaming down my face. My friend sat up, wide-eyed, asking what was wrong, but he didn't see it. He didn't see any of it. The shadows froze. The figure's glowing eyes locked onto me. And then slowly, it retreated. The others followed, melting back into the closet. The door creaked shut, leaving the room silent again. I was shaking violently, gasping for air. My friend stared at me scared now, asking if I was sick, if he should call someone. I couldn't answer. I just kept staring at the closet, waiting for it to move again. The rest of the night dragged on in silence. He eventually fell back asleep, though uneasily this time, tossing and turning. I sat awake, watching the closet, every nerve in my body screaming. The whispers never returned, but the silence was worse, heavy, expectant. When dawn finally came, I felt no relief. The sunlight meant nothing anymore. The closet stood there, closed, harmless looking. But I knew better. And for the first time, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just trying to scare me. It was waiting. Waiting for the moment I couldn't fight back anymore. FoGJ29069 Exion.com Scene 6. By the time the fifth night approached, I wasn't myself anymore. My reflection in the bathroom mirror that afternoon barely looked like me. Eyes sunken, skin pale, movements stiff like I was carrying the weight of weeks without rest. My hands trembled when I reached for the faucet, and I noticed faint scratches along my forearm I couldn't explain. They weren't deep, but they were there. Angry red marks like fingernails dragged across my skin while I slept. Except I hadn't slept. Not really, my friend was still oblivious. He asked if I was feeling sick, maybe coming down with something. I just nodded, said I was tired, which wasn't a lie. But how could I explain the truth? That something in his house, something in his closet, was wearing me down piece by piece, night after night. That every hour I spent here felt like I was sinking deeper into a place I couldn't climb out of. The day dragged on in slow motion. Every sound in the house grated against me. The groan of pipes, the hum of the fridge, the faint tapping of tree branches against windows. Even sunlight didn't help anymore. I sat at the kitchen table while he tried to make jokes, tried to lighten the mood, but all I could hear was the echo of that voice from the night before. You don't belong. When dusk finally came, I felt a panic building in me. I didn't want the night to arrive. I wanted to run, to leave the house and keep walking until my legs gave out. But I didn't move. Something held me there, an invisible weight pressing me down, whispering that leaving wasn't an option anymore. The climb up the stairs felt endless. Each step groaned under my weight, and the hallway stretched longer than it should have, like the house itself was shifting, warping. The curtain at the end of the hall fluttered again, and I forced myself not to look, not to see if anything pressed against it this time. My chest was tight with fear by the time I stepped into his room. The closet door was already ajar. Not wide, just enough. Always just enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it, while he talked about playing a game or maybe watching another movie. His voice felt far away, muffled, like I was underwater. My eyes never left that door. Hours passed. He fell asleep, as he always did. Easily, peacefully, like nothing was wrong. I envied him. The moment his breathing grew steady, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, thicker, pressing against my chest. The closet door creaked, slow, deliberate, wider. The darkness inside moved. Not shadows, movement. My body tensed. I couldn't look away. The shapes inside were clearer now, not just outlines but figures. Dozens of them. Tall, bent, twisted, all swaying slightly like they were breathing together. My skin crawled as their eyes opened, dim, glowing embers staring straight at me. Whispers filled the room. Not faint this time, but loud, surrounding me. Pressing into my ears, slipping under my skin. Words I couldn't understand, overlapping, drowning me. I clutched the blanket, shaking, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. Then from the cluster of shadows, one stepped forward. It was the same figure from before, tall, thin, head tilted unnaturally, limbs too long. But now it wasn't alone. Behind it, others shifted closer, their movements jerky, unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. The figure leaned out of the closet, its body stretching impossibly, and spoke. Stay. The word rattled the room, shaking the air. My friend stirred in his sleep but didn't wake. The figure's head snapped toward him, and my stomach turned. Its hand rose again, long fingers curling, pointing. The shadows thickened, spilling from the closet like smoke, creeping across the floor toward the bed. I panicked. My body finally responded, and I reached out, shaking my friend hard, whispering his name, begging him to wake up. He groaned, half awake, confused. That's when the figure hissed, not a word, just a sound. High-pitched, sharp, like glass shattering inside my skull. I cried out, clutching my head, tears streaming down my face. My friend sat up, wide-eyed, asking what was wrong, but he didn't see it. He didn't see any of it. The shadows froze. The figure's glowing eyes locked onto me, and then, slowly, it retreated. The others seen 6. By the time the 5th night approached, I wasn't myself anymore. My reflection in the bathroom mirror that afternoon barely looked like me. Eyes sunken, skin pale, movements stiff like I was carrying the weight of weeks without rest. My hands trembled when I reached for the faucet, and I noticed faint scratches along my forearm I couldn't explain. They weren't deep, but they were there. Angry red marks like fingernails dragged across my skin while I slept. Except I hadn't slept. Not really, my friend was still oblivious. He asked if I was feeling sick, maybe coming down with something. I just nodded, said I was tired, which wasn't a lie. But how could I explain the truth? That something in his house, something in his closet, was wearing me down piece by piece, night after night. That every hour I spent here felt like I was sinking deeper into a place I couldn't climb out of. The day dragged on in slow motion. Every sound in the house grated against me. The groan of pipes, the hum of the fridge, the faint tapping of tree branches against windows. Even sunlight didn't help anymore. I sat at the kitchen table while he tried to make jokes, tried to lighten the mood, but all I could hear was the echo of that voice from the night before. You don't belong. When dusk finally came, I felt a panic building in me. I didn't want the night to arrive. I wanted to run, to leave the house and keep walking until my legs gave out. But I didn't move. Something held me there, an invisible weight pressing me down, whispering that leaving wasn't an option anymore. The climb up the stairs felt endless. Each step groaned under my weight, and the hallway stretched longer than it should have, like the house itself was shifting, warping. The curtain at the end of the hall fluttered again, and I forced myself not to look, not to see if anything pressed against it this time. My chest was tight with fear by the time I stepped into his room. The closet door was already ajar. Not wide, just enough. Always just enough. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it, while he talked about playing a game or maybe watching another movie. His voice felt far away, muffled, like I was underwater. My eyes never left that door. Hours passed. He fell asleep, as he always did. Easily, peacefully, like nothing was wrong. I envied him. The moment his breathing grew steady, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew colder, thicker, pressing against my chest. The closet door creaked, slow, deliberate, wider. The darkness inside moved. Not shadows, movement. My body tensed. I couldn't look away. The shapes inside were clearer now, not just outlines but figures. Dozens of them. Tall, bent, twisted, all swaying slightly like they were breathing together. My skin crawled as their eyes opened, dim, glowing embers staring straight at me. Whispers filled the room. Not faint this time, but loud, surrounding me, pressing into my ears, slipping under my skin. Words I couldn't understand, overlapping, drowning me. I clutched the blanket, shaking, teeth clenched to keep from screaming. Then from the cluster of shadows, one stepped forward. It was the same figure from before, tall, thin, head tilted unnaturally, limbs too long. But now it wasn't alone. Behind it, others shifted closer, their movements jerky, unnatural, like marionettes pulled by invisible strings. The figure leaned out of the closet, its body stretching impossibly, and spoke. Stay. The word rattled the room, shaking the air. My friend stirred in his sleep but didn't wake. The figure's head snapped toward him, and my stomach turned. Its hand rose again, long fingers curling, pointing. The shadows thickened, spilling from the closet like smoke, creeping across the floor toward the bed. I panicked. My body finally responded, and I reached out, shaking my friend hard, whispering his name, begging him to wake up. He groaned, half awake, confused. That's when the figure hissed, not a word, just a sound. High-pitched, sharp, like glass shattering inside my skull. I cried out, clutching my head, tears streaming down my face. My friend sat up, wide-eyed, asking what was wrong, but he didn't see it. He didn't see any of it. The shadows froze. The figure's glowing eyes locked onto me, and then, slowly, it retreated. The others followed, melting back into the closet. The door creaked shut, leaving the room silent again. I was shaking violently, gasping for air. My friend stared at me, scared now, asking if I was sick, if he should call someone. I couldn't answer. I just kept staring at the closet, waiting for it to move again. The rest of the night dragged on in silence. He eventually fell back asleep, though uneasily this time, tossing and turning. I sat awake, watching the closet, every nerve in my body screaming. The whispers never returned, but the silence was worse, heavy, expectant. When dawn finally came, I felt no relief. The sunlight meant nothing anymore. The closet stood there, closed, harmless looking. But I knew better, and for the first time, I realized something terrifying. It wasn't just trying to scare me, it was waiting for the moment I couldn't fight back anymore. Melting back into the closet. The door creaked shut, leaving the room silent again. I was shaking violently, gasping for air. My friend stared at me, scared now, asking if I was sick, if he should call someone. I couldn't answer. I just kept staring at the closet, waiting for it to move again. The rest of the night dragged on in silence. He eventually fell back asleep, though uneasily this time, tossing and turning. I sat awake, watching the closet, every nerve in my body screaming. The whispers never returned, but the silence was worse, heavy. Scene 7. Part 1, English translation. The sky was painted with the hues of dusk. The last light of the sun was slowly fading in the western horizon. As Rahul walked down the broken, deserted roads of the old part of the city, he felt the silence around him grow unnaturally heavy. So much had already happened. Misunderstandings with friends, broken promises, and that chain of mysterious events that had dragged him to this very place. Tonight was going to be a turning point in his life. He could feel it with every breath he took. On both sides of the road, old buildings stood shrouded in darkness. Through shattered windows came the eerie whistling of the wind. Somewhere far away, a dog barked, then stopped suddenly. The sound faded, and silence closed in again. In Rahul's hand was a small piece of paper. On it, a few rough lines were scribbled. Tonight, exactly at 8 o'clock, reach the old Chowrangi building. You will find all the answers there. He had no idea who had written it, but everything that had happened so far convinced him that some unknown force was at work. When he finally reached the Chowrangi building, night had already fallen. The structure seemed to glow faintly from within, as if someone was waiting inside. Rahul stopped in his tracks. His heartbeat quickened. He knew that once he stepped in, there might be no coming back. But if he wanted the answers, this was the moment. Slowly, he pushed open the door and entered. Inside, the building was drowned in a haunting silence. Old picture frames lined the walls, their human faces blurred and faded with time. Dust and cobwebs hung thick in the air, filling it with a strange, pungent smell. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Light, but unmistakable. Someone was descending from the upper floor. Rahul held his breath, frozen in place. The footsteps stopped, and then, from the shadows, came a faint, chilling voice. "You've come, at last." Scene 8. The House of Whispering Shadows. The storm outside raged like a wild beast clawing at the earth. Thunder shook the air and lightning illuminated the crumbling mansion for fleeting seconds. The windows rattled, the old wooden frames threatening to snap under the wind's violent grip. Inside, silence lingered, an unnatural silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. The group had returned here against their own will, drawn back by something they couldn't name. Their footsteps echoed on the rotten floorboards, each creak like a whisper in the cavernous dark. Arif held the lantern high, his knuckles pale with tension. "This place, it's not the same," he muttered. His voice was barely audible, yet the walls seemed to swallow it whole. Sadia trailed close behind him, shivering, though not from the cold. She could feel it, the same presence that had never truly left them. It was watching, always watching. From the staircase above came a groan, long and low, like someone exhaling after a century of sleep. "Did you hear that?" Hassan froze mid-step, his hand instinctively clutching the iron rod he had brought along. The lantern flickered, shadows crawling like living things across the peeling wallpaper. For a moment, Sadia thought she saw a hand stretch out from the dark corner, long, bony fingers clutching the air, then vanish as if it had never been there. Her breath caught in her throat. We shouldn't be here, but something deeper than fear anchored them to the spot. This house still had answers. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed shut with a force that made the whole mansion tremble. Scene 9. The locked halls, Sadia's breath hitched in her throat, unfinished, caught somewhere between a gasp and a scream. The slam echoed through the corridors until it faded into a suffocating stillness. Arif tightened his grip on the lantern, though the flame sputtered like it was struggling to survive the air itself. "It's here," he whispered. He didn't say what. He didn't need to. Hassan took a cautious step backward. The floor groaned beneath his weight, the sound too loud, too alive. He forced his voice steady, though it cracked in the middle. We should check upstairs. No, Sadia said sharply, surprising herself. The words spilled out of her mouth before she could stop it. Her eyes darted toward the staircase, the dark maw at its top that seemed to pulse with something unseen. If we go up there, we won't come back. As if answering her, the staircase groaned again. This time, the sound didn't end. It stretched, a long, dragging creak, like someone, or something, was slowly descending. The shadows thickened. They pooled at the edges of the walls, slithered across the floorboards, and swelled with each flicker of the lantern, like tides rising with the storm. Then came the whisper, a different one this time, closer. It rose from the darkness around their feet, seeping up through the rotten planks. Stay. Sadia's blood ran cold. Her hand found Arif's sleeve, gripping so tightly he winced. Lightning tore open the sky again, and for a split second the hall was drenched in a harsh white glow. The shadows writhed, bending into shapes that almost looked like faces, twisted, screaming, reaching. And then the light was gone. Only darkness. Only breath. Somewhere above, soft footsteps began to descend the stairs. Scene 10. The House of Whispering Shadows lightning tore open the sky once more, casting the mansion in a stark, momentary light. The cracked walls, cobwebs sagging in the corners, and half-broken furniture seemed to twist together into the shape of some waking nightmare. Sadia froze mid-step. She felt it, a cold breath brushing the back of her neck. Her chest tightened, her breath trapped in her throat. Slowly, she turned around. No one was there, and yet, out of the corner of her eye, a shadow rippled. Someone's here. With us, she whispered, her voice trembling. Hassan's knuckles whitened as he gripped the iron rod tighter. The veins on his hand throbbed. It was all he had, his only anchor. Whatever it is, it's upstairs. We have to face it. But Arif stopped dead. The lantern shook in his hand, its glow stuttering. His eyes were wide, almost hollow. No, don't you see? We're not climbing the stairs. The house is pulling us up. It wants us there. The words hung heavy in the air. Hassan and Sadia exchanged a glance. But before either could respond, something stirred at the landing. Not a man. Something else. Its form wavered like smoke, tall and hunched, its outline bending unnaturally. When the lantern's glow touched it, the shape dissolved, retreating from the light as if it were poison. The air thickened. From the cracks in the walls, whispers bled out. Dozens of voices, overlapping, broken, yet carrying one word again and again. You came back. Sadia's stomach nodded. It remembers us. Then the door at the top of the staircase creaked, slowly swinging open. From within, a darkness poured out, not ordinary dark, but a void so thick it devoured the lantern's light. Arif stepped forward, trembling yet resolute. They want us inside, thunder roared, rattling the mansion's bones. The windows shook as if about to burst. Outside, the storm raged wild, but inside, an unseen force tugged at their feet, pulling them upward toward the waiting door. And in their silence, all three of them realized the same truth. There was no turning back. Scene 11. The Room That Remembers. The stairs groaned under their weight, as though each step was swallowed by the house itself. The pull was subtle but undeniable, urging them upward with every trembling breath. Hassan's iron rod scraped against the banister, the sound sharp and grating in the heavy silence. At the top, the door yawned open wider, the void behind it breathing like a living thing. The darkness pulsed, slow, deliberate, like the beat of a giant, unseen heart. Sadia clutched her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her nails biting into the fabric. This isn't just a room, she whispered. It's waiting. Arif raised the lantern higher, though its light barely reached past his hand. Within the room, shapes shifted, indistinct, formless, yet suffocating. For an instant, Sadia thought she saw the outline of faces. Mouths stretched in silent screams, eyes wide and glassy, and then a voice, softer than breath yet filling every corner. You should have stayed away. Hassan's jaw clenched. He forced one step forward, his rod lifted as if it could ward off the void itself. But the closer he came to the threshold, the heavier the air grew, pressing down on his chest until his ribs ached. The lantern flickered violently. Arif gasped, nearly dropping it. In the dying glow, the walls of the room came into view. They weren't walls at all, but layers of shifting shadows, bodies woven into the dark, their outlines writhing as if trapped beneath the skin of night. Sadia's breath hitched. They're not shadows. They're the ones who came before us. The whispers rose into a chorus, hissing, pleading, mocking. Some cried for help. Others laughed. Others repeated the same phrase again and again. You came back. You came back. You came back. The force that had been pulling them now became irresistible, yanking them forward. Hassan fought it, muscles straining, but his feet still scraped across the floor, inching toward the room. And then, the door slammed shut behind them. Darkness swallowed the last flicker of the lantern. And the house, at last, spoke in a single unified voice. Now you will remember. Scene 13. The first claim. The circle burned brighter, its glow pulsing like a heartbeat. The shadows along the floor quivered, alive, as if tasting the fear leaking from their bodies. Hassan took a step forward, iron rod raised, but the air thickened around him, pulling his arms down as though invisible chains dragged at his strength. Don't cross it, Arif gasped, clutching Hassan's sleeve. His eyes were wide, glazed, like someone half in this world, half somewhere else. The circle's not holding us in. It's keeping that out. The figure at the edge tilted its head, a jerky, unnatural motion. Its face shifted, sliding from feature to feature. An old woman's hollow eyes, a child's cracked smile, a man's crooked jaw, until for a split second, it wore Hassan's own face. Sadia staggered back, choking on a cry. It's showing us ourselves. The whispers rose to a deafening hiss. Dozens of hands, thin and gray, stretched up from the floor beyond the circle, clawing, reaching, stopping just short of touching the three of them. The house seemed to vibrate with hunger. Then, a sharp crack. The lantern, though unlit, split in Arif's trembling grip. He dropped the shards, staring at his bleeding palm as if the wound wasn't his. The circle responded instantly. The red glow surged toward his blood, threads of light crawling across the floor and latching onto the drops. Arif screamed, stumbling backward. His shadow, stretched by the glow, tore free from his feet. It writhed, twisting, until it stood tall beside him, its form darker than the room around it. The shadow turned its head, and though it had no mouth, its whisper crawled into all of their ears. One must stay. Hassan swung his rod wildly at it, but the weapon passed through, clanging uselessly against the floor. The shadow only rippled and leaned closer to Arif, as if savoring the inevitability. Sadia grabbed Arif's arm. No, we're not leaving you. Don't listen. But Arif's face was pale, sweat dripping down his temples. His voice shook. It's me. The house chose me. I can feel it pulling, like it's already inside me. The figure at the edge of the circle began to crawl closer, testing the boundary. Its claws scraped against the glowing seal, sending sparks into the air. Every impact made the circle flicker weaker. And then, in a voice deeper than thunder, the house itself spoke again, every wall vibrating with the words, one must stay, or all will remain. Scene 14. The fracture. The circle shuddered, its glow sputtering like a dying fire. Each pulse dimmed faster than the last. Sadia clutched Arif's hand tighter, smearing his blood across her own skin. If it wants blood, it'll take mine too. You're not doing this alone. The shadow, Arif's shadow, cocked its head as if amused. The outlines of its body rippled, stretching taller, sharper, until horns curled from its skull, and its arms split into clawed branches. It no longer resembled him. It resembled something that had always been waiting. Don't give it more, Hassan barked, dragging Sadia back. His voice shook, but his eyes were steel. It doesn't want sacrifice. It wants consent. That's the trap! Arif staggered, clutching his chest. His breath came in ragged gasps, as if something inside him was pulling his lungs apart. The circle's glow licked higher around his feet like fire drawn to oil. The house groaned again, beams in the ceiling splintering, dust raining down. The voice pressed into their skulls, deeper now, almost gentle. Choose. A vessel, or eternity in me. The figure at the edge pressed harder against the circle. Its body cracked as it bent unnaturally low, crawling on all fours, its head dragging along the ground like a broken doll. With every scrape of its claws, the glowing line dimmed another fraction. Hassan raised the iron rod again, his knuckles white. Then we end it now. Circle or not, he stepped forward, but the air thickened once more, holding him back like hands on his chest. His jaw clenched as he realized it wasn't stopping him this time, it was pushing him outward. Toward the edge, Sadia screamed and grabbed for him. The floor rippled, the wood board sagging under her feet as if she were standing on something alive, something breathing. Arif's shadow leaned close, so close its head nearly pressed to his ear. Its whisper wasn't a sound, but a vibration in his bones. You already know. It's you. Step forward, and they go free. Tears streaked down his face. If I don't, we all stay, the circle faltered, sparks bursting from its edges. The figure's claws slid inside now, just inches from Sadia's ankle. Hassan roared, straining against the invisible pressure, voice breaking. "Don't you dare! You hear me, Arif? Don't you give in!" Arif turned, his face hollow with resolve. Maybe this is why the house brought us here. And with a single trembling step, he moved toward the edge of the circle. The glow flared. The shadow surged. The house laughed. Scene 15. The crossing Arif's foot touched the glowing edge. The circle screamed, not with sound, but with light, a blinding pulse that filled the room like a flash of lightning trapped in four walls. Sadia shrieked, yanking him back, but his body was already locked. His veins glowed red, each one alive with the same burning thread as the circle. The figure beyond the seal stopped crawling. It rose slowly, unnaturally, joints popping backward, head tilting until its face was upside down. It smiled, though it had no lips to do so. Hassan slammed the iron rod down against the floor, again and again, sparks flying. "Break it! Break the circle before it takes him!" His voice was raw, desperate, but the house replied, every wall vibrating in laughter that curdled the air. "It is done." The glow wrapped around Arif's torso, his arms, his throat, pinning him in place. His shadow stepped fully free now. No tether, no hesitation. It towered, jagged wings of smoke unfurling from its back. Sadia's tears burned her cheeks as she clutched him. "Fight it, Arif! Please, you're stronger than this." For a moment he looked at her. Really looked. His lips trembled with words he couldn't form. His pupils bled into black. Then he was gone. Not vanished. Replaced. His body stiffened, head lolling back, mouth opening wider than it should. The laugh of the house spilled from his throat. Deeper, louder, layered with dozens of voices. The circle shattered. Lines of red light cracked outward like veins, crawling across the walls, the ceiling, the very bones of the house. The figure that had waited outside stepped forward freely now, crossing into their space with no resistance. Sadia screamed, dragging Hassan back. "It's inside him! It took him!" But Hassan didn't move. His grip on the iron rod tightened, his eyes locked on what used to be his friend. "Then we end it. Even if it's Arif." The house thundered, shaking the ground beneath them. The shadow spread its wings wide, blotting out what little light was left. And from Arif's mouth came the decree, calm, final, eternal. No one leaves. Scene 16. The fracture. The scream rattled through the house, no longer mocking but shrill, jagged, like nails dragged across stone. The walls buckled and swelled, the air thick as tar. Every breath clawed at their throats. The runes shuddered, light spasming like a heartbeat on the verge of failure. Sadia's hands shook violently, blood dripping onto the parchment until the symbols ran slick and red. She pressed harder, knuckles white, whispering through clenched teeth. "Don't let go, Arif. Don't let them take you." Not now. Arif's body convulsed. His arms jerked like a puppet's on frayed strings. The shadow wrapped tighter, clawing at his chest, forcing its way back inside him. Its wings shrieked like tearing metal, spreading wide enough to scrape the ceiling beams. Hassan scrambled to his feet, grabbing the iron rod once more. His hands bled from splinters, but he didn't flinch. He set his stance, eyes fixed on the thing that had once been his brother. "You hear me, Arif? If you want out, then fight. Otherwise, I swear..." He raised the rod, voice cracking with fury. "I'll end this before it swallows you whole." The house laughed again, though weaker now, fractured, like its confidence had been pierced. The laughter cracked into coughing roars, and every window in the house shattered inward at once. Glass rained down, slicing across Hassan's arms, Sadia's shoulders, even Arif's skin. None of them moved. Arif's mouth gaped unnaturally wide, a flood of shadows spilling out like smoke mixed with ash. His voice came jagged, layered, broken. "Burn with us!" The floorboards beneath Sadia split open. Black roots, slick and pulsing, writhed upward, wrapping around her ankles, dragging her down into the gape. Hassan swung his rod, smashing the wood, breaking the grasping tendrils, but more kept coming. The house itself was trying to consume them. Sadia screamed through gritted teeth, refusing to let go of the parchment. "Hassan, hold it back, just for 1 second more!" He didn't argue. He leapt onto the cracking boards, rod blazing with sparks as he smashed and smashed, each strike laced with desperation. 1 second, 1 damn second, Sadia, make it count. The runes on the parchment blazed white-hot, brighter than before. Sadia's eyes rolled back, blood dripping from them like tears. Her voice rose, not her own, but carrying the echo of something older. Something that had written those runes long before she was born. By blood and breath, by the bond unbroken, return to the name that is yours. Arif screamed. Not the demon, not the house. Arif. His knees buckled, his spine arched until it nearly snapped. From his chest the shadow burst outward, a jagged form shrieking as it tore away from him. For the first time it wasn't laughing, it was howling in pain. The walls shook so violently that dust poured down in choking clouds. Cracks ran like lightning through the plaster. Beams snapped overhead. Hassan grabbed Sadia by the shoulders, shaking her. "That's it! It's working! Keep going!" But Sadia looked half dead already, her lips pale, her body trembling like a candle flame in the wind. She coughed blood, forcing the words through her throat. "Arif, take yourself back!" The shadow roared, clawing against the fiery runes now wrapped around its throat like chains. Its wings melted into smoke, its body flickering in and out of form. It lashed and the floor collapsed beneath it. But the runes held, dragging it back toward Aref's chest like a tether pulling a beast to its cage. And then, Aref's hand moved, not the monster's. His. He lifted it, trembling, fighting the invisible weight crushing him. His eyes, brown again, wide and wet, locked onto Sadia's. "Sadia, don't, stop." Her breath broke on a sob. "I won't, I swear I won't!" Arif's other hand rose, clamping onto the shadow's claw. His skin blistered instantly, seared by the contact. But he didn't let go. He pulled, dragging it toward himself. The monster shrieked in defiance, wings thrashing, trying to tear free. The parchment burned to ash in Sadia's hand, the runes dissolving in a final flash of red and white. But the glow didn't vanish. It spread, embedding itself into Arif's veins once more. His whole body blazed like a furnace. The shadow writhed, screeching, until it was sucked into his chest with a blast that sent Hassan and Sadia crashing to the ground. Silence. The house stopped moving. The laughter died. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. In the center of the room, Arif collapsed to his knees, smoke curling from his mouth. His body shook violently, every muscle spasming. His eyes were closed. Sadia crawled toward him, blood smearing across the floor with each movement. Arif, talk to me, please." Hassan didn't move. He stood rigid, rod clutched tight, watching Arif's still form with haunted eyes. What if it's not him? What if it's still in there? Arif's head lifted slowly. His eyes opened, brown, tired, wet with tears. His lips trembled. "Sadia, Hassan." Relief broke through Sadia's chest. She reached for him, and froze. Behind him, the shadow still lingered. Not full, not free, but there. Faint, whisper-thin, curling around him like a second skin. Hassan's face went pale. "It's not gone, it's bound to him now." Arif's tears spilled down his cheeks. His voice was broken, raw. "It didn't leave. It can't. It's inside me. I'm—" The lock now. The house groaned low, almost pleased, as though agreeing. Sadia clutched his hand, shaking her head. "No, we can fix this. We'll find a way." But Arif only looked at them both with hollow eyes, the shadow flickering like a heartbeat behind him. "You don't understand. This house isn't trapped anymore. I am." And above them, the ceiling cracked open, dust raining down as the house began to stir awake again. Scene 17. The root of the house. The ceiling above them groaned, dust sifting down like ash from a dead fire. Every wall breathed in and out, wood swelling, then shrinking, as though the house itself had grown lungs. The silence that followed Arif's words was worse than the screams had been. A silence swollen with threat, as if the house was listening, waiting. Sadia clutched Arif's hand tighter, her knuckles white, her body trembling with exhaustion. His palm was cold, clammy, though fire still flickered faintly in the veins that glowed beneath his skin. "No," she whispered, shaking her head violently. "No, you're still you. You pulled it out, you—" But her words faltered. She could see the outline of the shadow, translucent but steady, hovering around him like smoke caught in a jar. Its wings twitched when his chest rose, its claws flexed when his fingers curled. They moved as one. Hassan circled them slowly, iron rod dragging against the broken floorboards. The sound shrieked like metal on bone. His face was hard, but his eyes betrayed the storm inside. "It's not gone, Sadia. Look at him." He raised the rod, his grip trembling. "If he's the lock, then we break the lock before it breaks us." Sadia whipped her head toward him, eyes blazing. "You touch him and I swear, Hassan." "Swear what?" Hassan snapped, his voice raw. "That thing already hollowed him once. You think it won't do it again? You think it'll just sit inside him quietly while we look for some miracle? He's already gone. He said it himself." Arif's head lifted slowly. His lips parted, voice a hoarse rasp. "I'm still here." The words shook both of them. Sadia pressed closer, tears spilling freely now. "See? He's fighting. He's still—" but her sentence shattered under a sudden jolt. The floor beneath Arif splintered, long cracks racing outward like a spiderweb. From within those cracks, thick black roots surged upward, dripping with dark ichor. They didn't grab this time. They didn't lash. They bowed. Every tendril bent low around Arif, curling toward him like subjects kneeling before their king. Hassan staggered back, the iron rod clattering from his hands. His mouth worked, but no words came. Sadia shook her head, horror widening her eyes. No, this isn't him. This isn't... The roots pulsed in rhythm with Arif's breath. With each inhale, they swelled. With each exhale, they slackened. The entire house trembled in sync with his lungs. Arif clutched his chest, body racked with violent spasms. His scream tore free. Not wholly human, not wholly monstrous, but both. His shadow stretched wide, bleeding out across the floorboards until it covered every wall. The house moved with him. The silence shattered. The house roared. Beams cracked overhead, snapping like dry bones. Furniture hurled itself against the walls. The ground rippled as though the foundation itself was breaking apart. Hassan grabbed Sadia by the arm, yanking her away from the collapsing floor. Move! Move! But Sadia fought him, twisting back toward Arif. I'm not leaving him! Arif's eyes flew open, burning coals once more. His mouth moved, but when he spoke, the words came in two voices layered atop each other. His own, raw and terrified, and the other, deep, amused, triumphant. You can't leave. You woke it. You woke me. The roots lashed upward suddenly, not to bind, but to build. They wove themselves into walls, towers of black wood growing from the shattered floor, reshaping the room into something alien, cathedral-like. The ceiling stretched higher and higher, vanishing into darkness. The lantern glass on the ground rattled, then floated upward, shards rearranging themselves into jagged windows glowing with crimson light. Streaks of red script scrawled themselves across the walls, alive, writhing. They were no longer in a house. They were inside the heart of the thing, the root of it. Sadia fell to her knees, staring upward as the new walls pulsed like veins. Oh God, it's alive! The house is alive! Arif rose to his feet, though his body shook as though every movement was agony. His head tilted back, wings of smoke fanning wider behind him. His own voice burst through the demonic overlay for one broken moment. Run! Before I can't stop it. Hassan seized Sadia's hand and pulled hard. You heard him! Run! But the new cathedral doors slammed shut with a boom that split their eardrums. Red chains of light bound them shut, sealing the three inside. The laughter came again, not from the walls this time, but from Arif's throat. It rolled out like thunder, shaking the marrow in their bones. There is no outside. There never was. This house doesn't contain me. I am the house. Sadia clapped her hands over her ears, rocking back and forth, whispering frantically, Not him, not him, not him. Hassan stood tall despite the tremor in his hands, bending to pick up his rod once more. He glared at what was left of his friend, voice breaking with rage. Then I'll tear this house apart brick by brick, even if I have to tear you with it. The floor split wide, a yawning chasm gaping between them. From its depths came not fire, not smoke, but whispers. Thousands of whispers, layered, echoing, crawling into their ears. Each one spoke their names. Each one begged. Each one cursed. Arif stood on the far side, haloed in crimson, wings spreading until they blotted out every flicker of light. His body swayed as though he wasn't entirely in control. His lips trembled, one last human word slipping through before the shadows drowned it. Please, kill me. And then his shadow swallowed him whole. The cathedral pulsed. The walls bled. The house roared, and this time the roar sounded hungry. Mama Ereger part daw scene 16. Scene 18, the Cathedral of Hunger. The whispers rose like a tide. From the chasm below, thousands of voices tangled together, speaking over each other, clawing into Hassan and Sadia's ears until their skulls rang. Some pleaded, gasping their names as though drowning. Others cursed with venom, their words dripping into the marrow. A few whispered things too intimate, too exact. Things no stranger should know. Sadia clutched her head, her nails digging bloody crescents into her scalp. Stop it! Stop it! Stop! Hassan seized her shoulder, pulling her upright, though his own face was pale, lips trembling under the onslaught. Don't listen. They're not real. He shouted the words, but they were swallowed instantly by the storm of voices. His denial cracked as one whisper cut sharper than the rest. His dead brother's voice, soft and accusing. You left me. You let me die. Hassan's jaw clenched, his eyes blazing as though the wound had torn open anew. He gripped the iron rod tighter until his knuckles bled. Lies! He hissed, more to himself than to anyone else. Across the chasm, Arif's silhouette loomed larger, consumed by the shadow that bled from his body. Wings of smoke unfurled wider, blotting out the crimson light until only his burning eyes pierced the dark. When he moved, the cathedral itself moved with him. Walls flexing like muscles, beams groaning like bones under strain. His voice rumbled through the air, a chorus of many throats speaking as one. Do you hear them? Every soul this house has eaten, every root that fed me. They sing for you. They hunger for you. Sadia staggered forward, shaking her head violently. No, that's not you, Arif. That's it. The thing inside you. Fight it! For a heartbeat, the wings trembled. His face twisted, pained, a flicker of the man she knew breaking through. His lips quivered, and one breath escaped in his own voice. Sadia, run! Then the laughter tore through him again, jagged and cruel, and the cathedral walls pulsed with it. Roots lashed upward from the floor, striking like serpents. Hassan swung his rod, iron sparking as it struck one tendril, splitting it in half. Black ichor sprayed across the tiles, sizzling where it landed. But for every root severed, two more sprouted, weaving themselves into jagged spires. They spiraled upward, scrawling with crimson script, forming symbols that shifted and writhed, burning themselves into Hassan's retinas. Sadia screamed as a root wrapped around her ankle, dragging her across the slick floor toward the chasm. Hassan lunged, slamming his rod down on the tendril until it shriveled and snapped. He hauled her back to her feet, his voice hoarse with rage. Stay behind me. I can't. She sobbed, her eyes never leaving Arif. If I leave him, if I give up, then it's over. He'll be gone forever. Open your eyes. Hassan barked, shoving her behind him as another root lashed at his chest. The iron rod crackled, searing it in two. His teeth bared, feral as he spat toward Arif. He's already gone. The words struck like a knife. Arif's body convulsed across the chasm, shadow wings snapping open with a deafening boom that rattled the very walls. His scream tore free, not human, not beast, but something vast, something cosmic. The sound knocked them both to their knees. The cathedral answered its master. The jagged windows shattered, shards hovering in the air like blades. The floor writhed, splitting into black roots that slithered under their feet, raising them as if the room itself wanted to swallow them whole. The ceiling melted into darkness, stars blinking in the void, wrong and shifting, constellations that burned with red light and rearranged themselves into runes. Sadia looked upward, her breath stolen. This isn't a house anymore, she whispered. It's a body. Hassan forced himself to his feet, chest heaving, his iron rod glowing faint from the heat of constant strikes. Then we carved through its heart. He leapt forward, driving the rod into the floor. Light burst from the strike, a white-hot crack racing through the roots. The cathedral shuddered, a howl splitting from its walls like a wounded animal. Arif staggered as though struck himself, clutching his chest, fire and shadow warring across his skin. Sadia's eyes widened. You're hurting him! I'm hurting it, Hassan snarled, raising the rod for another strike. Don't you dare stop me now! But before he could bring it down, the roots surged in a tidal wave, slamming him against the wall with bone-snapping force. His iron rod clattered out of reach, swallowed by the crawling floor. Hassan gasped, blood spilling from his mouth, pinned like an insect under the house's grip. Hassan! Sadia shrieked, reaching for him, only for more tendrils to coil around her wrists. Dragging her to her knees, Arif stepped closer to the edge of the chasm, his face half shrouded in darkness, half lit by that crimson glow. His voice broke into two tones, one pleading, one mocking. Kill me, if you can. But you won't. His wings spread until the entire cathedral drowned in shadow. Sadia's tears burned hot trails down her cheeks. She screamed across the chasm, voice breaking against the roar of the house. Arif! If you're still in there, fight it! Don't let it take you! For one moment, silence cut through the chaos. Arif's shadow froze. His body shook violently, head jerking as though two wills pulled at him from opposite sides. His burning eyes flickered, red, then human, then red again. The whispers swelled louder, screaming his name, screaming hers, screaming Hassan's. The roots writhed, chains of crimson light snapping across the doors, across the windows, across the chasm. And from Arif's mouth came a sound no human throat should ever make. A scream torn in half, one side raw and desperate, the other triumphant and cruel. The cathedral walls split wide, bleeding ichor, as if the house itself were tearing open, and in that moment, both Sadia and Hassan knew. This was not just a possession, this was a coronation.